G'day guys, welcome to the first episode of the Swordplay NBL GDS Podcast. Absolutely pumped for this one. A certain platform has absolutely dropped the ball, Supercoach Classic. So we have a game for you that's absolutely going to knock your socks off. And to add to this, we have two absolute legends that have joined the Swordplay family for this GDS NBL series. First of all, you may be already familiar with this man. He has featured on the channel before, loves his AFL and loves his NBL stuff as well. It's the great Verns. Mate, welcome to the family and thank you very much for joining us. How have you been, my man?
Yeah, I've been great, dear. Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, I was pretty upset with what happened on the other platform. I'll be honest. I was cracking a bit of the sads, you could say. I was so upset. I was so hyped for this as well. I'm so anyone that jumped into my channel. I did make a video, sort of hyping up the season, getting ready for it, sort of thing. I'd watched all the Blitz games. I'd gotten my research in. I was so pumped for this to come, and then just so disappointed with the execution. But look, after cracking the sads for a little bit, you did reach out, DR, and you're like, you did remind me that there is a perfectly viable, if not, just equivalent platform that we have available in Game Day Squad. And honestly, I played this last year. I enjoyed it last year. And after I got over it a little bit, now I'm excited again. I've got all that adrenaline back. That research wasn't for nothing. And I'm ready to jump into this and absolutely smash it out.
Love it, mate. Love it. Because I know how passionate you are about the game. I know how much work you've put into this preseason already. So will not go to waste. That'll be easily transferable to this great game of GDS. And joining us as well, another man that I know was extremely disappointed when the other format absolutely died in the ass. But he's a very passionate NBL and NBA fan, really knows his basketball and really knows his fantasy as well. It's SC Boz. Boz, welcome to the Brotherhood as well, mate. Thank you for joining us. And how have you been, legend?
No worries at all, DR. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And yeah, I guess just like Verns, I was pretty upset when we heard the news. To be honest, there was a pretty famous newsbreaker currently in the NBL scene that kind of gave us a bit of an inkling that something was going to happen. I don't want to say that person's name, but so, to be fair, I did expect something like this to happen, but I just couldn't really believe it until I saw it. And then, last week the day came where they did announce that Classic wasn't going to be going ahead. So, just like Verns, had done plenty of research on players and especially like the new imports and things like that. But, with this opportunity now to be on Game Day Squad, that motivation's right back for the NBL season. So super keen to get involved.
Fantastic, mate. Now, I know that you haven't played NBL GDS before, and I'm actually in the same boat as you. Played a lot of AFL GDS this year, but it's going to be a big learning curve for us, mate. Verns has a little bit more experience, but hopefully one of us can track him down on the overall leaderboard, mate. But thanks again for joining us, boys. Pumped, as I said, to get into it. The agenda for the first podcast of the year. We've introduced the boys already, but we're also going to introduce the game of GDS for those of you who are not familiar with it, a bit of a how to play and how the game actually works. We're going to get into the scoring. Very important to look at the schedule. And then we're going to get into the team previews, all the ins and outs. As we mentioned, Verns and Boz have done a heap of preseason research. So they're going to tell you all about the players that we should look to obtain and chuck into our squads if possible. And then we're going to finish off by showing you what our current squads look like. So, boys, I think we should just get right into this. Now, before we get into how to play GDS, we do have a private league. So once you're signed in, and I'll add this to our Twitter feed and to the video description as well, but our private league, the code is BBall OKFS. So jot that down, put in your favorite somewhere, and make sure that you do join our private league so you can compete against us and hopefully kick our butts. It's going to be hard with these two blokes below me because their knowledge much more solid than mine, and I think I might be carried throughout this season. But boys, it's going to be an absolute ripper. So let's get into this GDS, and talk about how this game actually works. All right, so here we are on the home screen. You can see that I've selected NBL basketball, every type of fantasy sport you can think of, but we're going to focus on the basketball today. Now, how does this game actually works? It's actually a little bit simpler than what you may think. And if you are a fantasy sports fan, an NBL fan, and a card collector, then I tell you what, you are going to absolutely love this game, because the whole idea of Game Day Sports, or GDS as we call it for short, is to build up your fantasy squad based off players that you get from free card packs. Now, just for competing every week, you'll get some new packs to open each and every single round of the season. So if I go to my packs section here, you can see player packs. Mine are all empty at the moment because I've already started to build my squad. As soon as you sign up to Game Day Squad, you'll be able to receive free starter packs that you can open and use those players to build your squad. Now, if you use a referral code when you first sign into Game Day Squad, you will get $20 worth of free player packs to open. Now, the code that you need to enter is United, UNITED. That's going to get you not only your free starter packs, your bronze cards, but the chance to get yourself some really rare cards to add to your squad. And I'll talk about what rarer cards are in a little bit. Now, we know with Supercoach Classic, Gonski, there is no overall leaderboard. With Game Day Squad, not only is there an overall leaderboard, there's weekly prizes, but you get to choose what competition you actually want to participate in. You can see we have the starter, the contender, the classic, the challenger, as well as the champion. Now, we are mainly going to focus on your starter and contender competitions, but for those of you that have maybe played the game for a little while, got some really nice cards up your sleeve, you may be looking to play that challenger or even the champion competition. So let's talk about how this works, boys. Now, if we go to the players here, these are the players that I already own. I'll go to my players, and you can see that I've already opened up my packs, and this is my squad of players that I can select from. However, there is so much more that you can do. You can trade players, you can buy players, and you can even auction off players. This is the big difference with Game Day Squad. Although you may not own a particular player and you don't get him inside one of your packs, you can trade or even buy that player using some GDS funds. You can either put some funds into your account. You certainly don't have to. You can even win some GDS funds in your weekly prizes as well. Now, Vernsy, you have played this last year as well. Tell us what you like so much about the GDS NBL comp.
Yep. I think my favorite thing with it is it's not as reliant on these double game weeks. You know, in Supercoach, I'm sure plenty of people are probably transitioning over from that game mode, but you had a double game week meant that the player was going to get both those scores count. So if you weren't picking guys on the doubles, you're getting punished pretty hard for that. In GDS, it's only their highest score of the week that counts. So that does leave a lot more versatility open to be picking these guys that only have single game weeks and bring in your favorite players and watch them week in, week out. So I do love that aspect, that I can go ahead and I can bring in the unicorn Renz Blaenberg. I probably butchered that name. I'm going to call him the unicorn going forward and watch him every single week. So I love that aspect of this game.
And the other great thing about our player cards as well, it is a legacy competition. So the players and the cards that you get this season and this year, they're yours to keep forever. You can use them next season, the year after that as well. So some of these young guns that may not be as relevant this season, just keep them locked away, and maybe in a year or two, get a bit more experience under the belt, maybe a better role in the side. Then you can start rolling these guys out and start using them in your squads as well. So that's a great thing about it. It's a legacy comp, and you can keep these players forever. Boz, you haven't played the game before, but what do you think excites you most about this competition, being someone that's hearing about some of this stuff for the first time, mate?
Well, funnily enough, I played a lot of FIFA Ultimate Team as a bit of a teenager, and this is giving that kind of vibe where you're obviously opening packs and kind of, you know, working with the players you receive. I like how it's not too easy in the fact that you have to, you get to kind of, for example, the current Supercoach format, you pretty much just get to pick whoever you want, whoever's kind of playing in a double game week that week. I like the fact that there's going to be a lot of variation in teams. I also like the fact that it looks like in different competitions, there's different salary caps in terms of kind of the types of player cards you can put into the game, whether it's a bronze, gold, silver card, or I think there's some higher rarities, which I haven't really obviously obtained myself yet. So I think just a high variance of teams that we'll see across this format, which will, allow for, I guess, a better competition in terms of when you're, trying to beat your mate or beat someone that, beat one of us. You're not just relying on everyone having the same team. It's going to be a lot different in the players that we're going to see this season, which is really cool.
Absolutely, and a great point, mate. Now, you did talk about the rarity of the cards here. So we'll give you a quick explanation as to how that works. So first of all here, you can see that these are bronze cards. These are 1.0 multipliers. So, for example, if you look at Josh Bannon here, if he scores a 50, you're using a bronze card in your squad, you'll get 50 points for that. However, if we look to the next rarity here, which is silver, you can see the multiplier there is 1.1. So let's make this easy for those of us that aren't fantastic at maths. If your player gets 100 points, then if you are using a silver version of this player, you have a 1.1 multiplier, you'll get 110 points. You then go on to the golds, that's a 1.2 multiplier, you'll get 120 points for that. And we go all the way up to your diamonds here, where you can see a 1.4 multiplier, and then we get some legends and special cards there as well. Now, depending on what competition you're playing, you do also have a particular salary cap. Now, if we're looking at the starter comp here, this is for the players that are literally just starting out. The only type of cards you can use here are your bronze player cards. If you look to some of the other competitions here that we can compete in, for example, if you look at the contender, then this is a competition where we can use a mixture of our bronze as well as some of our silvers and our golds. And I've put a little bit of a team there together, but it is only bronze cards at the moment. The one that we're really going to focus on is this starter team. So let's have a look at the team, boys. As you can see, there are 5 on-field positions as well as 5 players on your bench. Now, with game day squad, all 10 players count towards your total score. So it really doesn't matter who you've got on field and who you've got on your bench here. All 10 players will count towards your total score. You can see you've got your small forward, your power forward, you've got your point guard, your center, as well as your shooting guard as well. So from week to week, you'll need to put 10 players in your squad, and you can play across multiple competitions as well. You can see that I've got a heap of players here that are currently in my reserves that I can use to start to build my starter squad. So I think that's a bit of a basic introduction as to how to play. And of course, we haven't even talked about the prizes, and we'll talk about that maybe in another video, boys, where we start to open up some packs. But GDS has some of the best prizes that you can get your hands on. Just as an example, in our contender competition, if you finish in the top 500, this is just for the week, boys, you're going to score yourself a free pack of cards, a common pack of cards that usually you'd have to actually spend some money on. So that's how easy it is in this game to win some weekly prizes. And the great thing about that is then you can really start to build your squads really, really quickly. I haven't even talked about the great Discord. I know, Verns, you're involved in that Discord, and that's another place where you can trade, sell, and make a bit of a move towards building up your squad as well. So, Vernsy, is there anything else you think we need to discuss game day squad, mate? Or do you think we can start to get into some of these team previews and discuss the blitz and some of our player profiles?
Yeah, look, I mean, we will obviously go through the scoring for Game Day Squad as well. But before we do that, I do want to bring up something with the Dynasty that you did mention. Now, if you are joining the game, as you said, DR, I did play last year, and players might be thinking, if I'm joining, I'm already behind the competition. People played last year, they're ahead of me in packs, things like that. The thing that's very different to NBL, to I guess other games, is there's a large rotation of players. There's a lot of imports that went out. There's a lot of imports that came in. There's guys that got two-way deals. There's guys coming over from college. It's a lot of people cycling in and out of this system. So I know, even though I played last year, I don't have any of the new imports at this current stage. So I don't have an advantage on you. A lot of the cards I have are already rotated out, or they're not usable this year because those imports have now left. So you actually aren't very far behind at all. Like, maybe I'll have a few of the common locals over you, but honestly, there's a good chance you'll probably get premium cards in these first few packs and you'll be able to contend with me from week one.
Love it. That's a really, really great point as well. It's really never too late to start with GDS, because we obviously do have the overall leaderboard, the seasonal leaderboard, but plenty of weekly stuff as well for all competitions. So let's crack into this then, boys. If you haven't already, just a quick reminder, when you first sign up, use that code UNITED, UNITED, and then you'll be able to get your hands on some of the packs that you see here in the store. You've got your commons, your rares, up to your uniques, and then the elite and rare unique packs as well. So let's just have a quick look at this, guys. So if you look at the uniques, your percentages of getting those real higher end cards are right up there. So with an elite pack, a 99% chance of getting a diamond. So you're basically locking in a really high end card here. If you want to go just even back to the commons, which are common prizes that you do get week to week, then 0% bronze, you get those week to week in your free starters, silver 60%, gold 30%. You can even get your platinums and diamonds, and even a small percentage of getting even a legend card in one of those common packs as well. But the idea when you're starting out isn't to invest necessarily a heap of funds into this. Just start with your free packs. And once you get really involved in the competition and looking to remove yourself from the starter comps and move your way up to the challenger type comps, then you could start to get a little bit more involved. But so many of these types of packs will be available as free prizes just for playing your starter and your contender comps as well. So let's get into this now, boys. It is time to take a quick look at the scoring before we get into our NBL side of stuff. So let's have a look at this. Now, there are certain players that this may favor, other players that you may think, oh, look, I'm not as sure, but let's go through it. Points scored. This is pretty simple. For each point scored, you get 1 point. So you get a 2-point jumper, you get 2 points. You score a 3-pointer, you get 3 points. However, there is an extra bonus. For every 3-pointer that you get, you will get a bonus point. So we get your 3 points for scoring a 3-pointer, plus 1 bonus point to add to that as well. So 4 points for a 3-pointer. Offensive rebounds, you get 3, rewarding that a little bit more. The defensive rebounds, you're getting 2. The assist kings, 4 for each assist, which is really nice. Steals are 5, blocks are 5. You can lose points. So there are some clanger type options here. A turnover is -3, and personal fouls are -2. As you can see to the right there, the multipliers, we've already mentioned that. And Verns did mention this before as well, that players that are on that double game week, you don't get both of their scores to add to your weekly or total score. It is the highest score out of the two. So, Boz, what are you thinking about this scoring system? It's a little bit different to the traditional Supercoach classic scoring system. Anything standing out to you?
I really like it, first and foremost. I think, adding in, offensive versus defensive rebounds, giving that extra point for a 3-point made. I think it really kind of is a bit more inclusive of some plays that maybe in the Supercoach format of this would be neglected in a way. I think we saw that just guards that shot and did a lot were the highest scoring players in a classic format. But coming over here to Game Day Squad, it's really cool to see there's a lot of value in different positions, I think, in this format. And I think defensive stats, so steals and blocks, are a premium. So right off the top of the bat, I don't want to give away too many things, but I think someone like a Dylan Windler from Perth, who I'm really high on this year in terms of being a bit more comfortable with how the NBL's played, I'll look at this scoring system. I think this fits this man perfectly. Doesn't really turn the ball over. I mean, he steals and blocks quite often for a forward. Probably doesn't assist as much as I'd like, but he can rebound for a bit of a smaller type player. So again, that's going to really benefit him, and he shoots the throw really, really well. So I think someone like a Dylan Windler, who traditionally may not be your number one pick in a classic format, I look at this scoring system and I'm like, wow, he can get points in so many different ways. So yeah, really, really, this has really excited me actually seeing this. It's really good.
Beautiful. And that's part of the reason why we got you across. All of a sudden looks at the new scoring system and goes, bang, this is good for Windler, those multiple scoring avenues. So that is a brilliant shout to start off there, Boz. Vernsy, what are you thinking of this scoring system, brother?
Yeah, I mean, Boz said it's those guys that can do a bit of everything. Honestly, your Milton Doyles is one of the guys that stands out for me. Someone that's always notoriously done a bit of everything without doing one thing, extremely well. In Supercoach, it definitely favored those guys, I feel, that just put the ball in the bucket. And we saw people like Cotton, be at the top end of Supercoach. Yes, he's scoring 50 points. That's remarkable in itself. But it definitely leaves the window open for, I guess, as we said, those guys that do a bit of everything. If you're going to score the bucket, you better make sure you're also getting rebounds, getting steals, getting assists, you're getting involved in other ways. So I do love that. As I said, it definitely opens the window for you want someone that can do a bit of everything. And personally, I'm pretty excited about someone like a Milton Doyle with this kind of scoring system.
A new signing to Melbourne United as well. So never thought I wouldn't see him as a Jack Jumper, but there you go. We'll go through the signings in a little bit. Before we do that, we'll take a quick look at the schedule, and a massive shout out to an absolute legend here. Pleb, love you, mate, and congratulations on all the success that you're getting off the court as well, brother. But Pleb's got this great graphic for us here. Now, you did touch on a little bit earlier, boys, that it's not as important as when we look at the traditional Supercoach Classic game, because you don't count both of your scores. And Vernsy, I think you touched on it, brother. If you've got a player, an absolute gun of the competition, that's just on a single but has a really nice matchup, then you may actually prefer him over just chucking someone in just because of the fact that they do have a double. So is there anything that really stands out to you, particularly at the start of the season here, mate? Any teams that you're liking, any teams that you're thinking, oh, maybe we don't need to invest in these teams' cards early on the season?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've obviously got some teams with the bye round one, so it is going to make the teams a little bit more straightforward for round one. But the thing is, there's no trades. You're not moving out 2 cards every week. You can scratch your entire squad and then rebuild it the future week. And that's usually what I would do. I'd hit the clear squad, and then I would look at some matchups and try and figure it out from there. It's always hard to tell early in the season, especially with NBL, where there is so much that changes in a squad. I think with Supercoach, you can sort of look at last year's data and then help use that to navigate this year's sort of data, where with NBL, the teams aren't remotely the same. They are almost completely different, some of these squads. So I don't know how you're going to be able to look at round one and be like, oh, last season this team, gave up a lot of points. That's not the same team anymore. You cannot rely on that information. So the first few weeks, I think, will be the hardest because we'll sort of gauge, who are these teams that maybe give up more points than others? Who are these teams that sort of lock down? I think the only, historical data we can sort of use is maybe coaching. I know Scott Roth over in Tasmania, he's always enjoyed a slower style of basketball. He enjoys using 24 seconds on the clock, getting through your sets and getting up a good shot. And then defensively, he wants to lock you down and make sure that you're taking a shot with seconds left on your shot clock in a bad situation. But because of that, Tasmania, they're notorious for being one of the best defensive teams. But what that means is we get some very low scoring games. And unlike, other formats where you can end up in a position where, example, AFL Supercoach, there's 3,300 points in that game that gets divided over every single player. And it doesn't matter what game you're in, it's always going to total that amount at the end. So it doesn't matter what sort of play style it is, you always get those points. In NBL, that's not the case. You'll have some teams that are maybe only getting 150 points one game and another team that's getting a total of 250 fantasy points. So there's going to be a big difference for the teams that play slower and teams that have a fast-paced game. So, we'll figure that out as the season goes, as I said, but definitely can use some historical information to help gauge that going into it.
Love it, mate. Boz, anything that's standing out to you when it comes to scheduling the fixture, brother, particularly earlier on in the season?
I think Verns kind of nailed it there. It's pretty hard to look at data trends that early, but I think just in terms of setting your squad up, I think best player available. So, just see who you have available cards-wise, and then I'd probably just pop in literally the better players of the bunch and just kind of back them in. I mean, you think about a Supercoach format where you back in your premiums or your primos. So, just set and forget those good players or those players that are going to hopefully take a bigger role for their team, as opposed to trying to kind of work around a schedule this early on. Although one thing I've noticed in the Blitz and preseason, it looks like Brisbane are very high octane offense, but at the same time concede lots of points. So look, if you want me to try and predict round one, I'd say a Breakers at home versus Brisbane. If you have any New Zealand Breakers players, could be a really good option to start in round one if they are going to be giving up over 100 points Brisbane a game.
This is why we have you two blokes on. Absolutely elite with your knowledge and information, boys. I'm already learning a lot, and we're about 20 odd minutes in. But let's start to get into these team previews. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look at some of the ins, some of the outs, and some of the changes. This was updated, I think, on September 8th. So there may be a couple of changes here and there, but the boys will be able to take us through what some of those are. So we're going to start off with the Adelaide 36ers. And we can see the guys are already contracted there. But look at some of these incoming ones. Now, there is no bigger incoming player than BC Bryce Cotton. Boys, I don't know how you feel about this, but I did not see this man leaving the Perth Wildcats. But here we are. Their loss and Adelaide's gain. What are our thoughts about Bryce Cotton, lads?
Oh, man. I mean, look, Adelaide were the talk of the town in the offseason with the moves they made. It was wild and so exciting. Also, Bryce getting naturalized as well. That's just nutty. Leaves such a huge window open for them if they want another import. Just for those that don't know, each team is allowed 3 imports. Bryce being naturalized means that obviously he's now considered an Australian citizen, meaning he is no longer considered an import, meaning it opens the window for another import to potentially come into Adelaide. Now, I'm pretty sure they already have a full roster, so they're not going to bring in an import, but there is always an injury replacement. If someone goes down in the future, they could always bring in an import to cover that. So, yeah, super, super exciting stuff from Adelaide.
Boz, anything that stands out to you here when we're looking at the ins and outs for Adelaide, my friend?
Well, look, I think Adelaide have probably got the most pressure surrounding their squad in terms of just winning the whole NBL this season. But I think, you know, as the pieces started to be added, the only thing that came to mind for me was, are there too many mouths to feed? Like, there is Cotton now who has dominated and needs the ball and has played almost 40 minutes a game for the last, 5-6 years in the league. You still have Montrezl Harrell, who's re-signed there. He demands the ball. DJ Vasiljevic, he's still there. He loves to shoot the ball. There's Isaac Humphries, who I don't really see getting a lot of minutes this year, unfortunately, because they also signed another import, Xylem Cheatham, who was a previous player of the Breakers a couple of years back. So for me, there's a lot of mouths that would want that ball. I hope it works for the sake of kind of Trez and Cotton and them getting along and for the season to go smoothly. But in terms of game day, like, are we going to only have Cotton and Trez as viable options? Or is someone going to pop up? Like, I just don't know. It's one of those ones where you have to watch and see for the first 3 weeks to see the data and see who actually is, using the ball more often than not. Because they've signed like Flynn Cameron from United, and he was this really young guy that everyone was keen on. And I think he was the first one that went across to Adelaide. And I was really excited. I'm like, good, more opportunity. Adelaide have now got Flynn Cameron. He'll be the starting point guard, and then bang, Bryce Cotton. So he probably has gotten to a worse situation than he was in last year at United, just because of that Bryce Cotton signing. But time will tell. But I think for now, I think it's a watch and see to see who obviously is maybe the top 2 or 3 kind of users on that team.
Beautiful, mate. Now, Vernsy, you did watch the Blitz pretty closely. What sort of things did you take out of that? And how do you think the 36ers are going to go this year, mate? We'll talk a little bit about the Blitz and then any particular plays that may have caught your eye.
Yeah, look, the Blitz, it's always a hard one to tell because teams aren't rocking up with their full squads going 100% sort of thing. I think the biggest thing you take out of the Blitz is if we're getting new imports in, you want to see how they're performing. Unfortunately with this, Bryce wasn't playing, Trez wasn't playing. So we got to see how Cheatham was sort of playing, but without the effect of, Humphrey didn't play, unfortunately, either. So without, another center on the field, without Trez on the field, we sort of saw that. So it makes it a bit hard to tell, I think, for Adelaide because they were really running a lot of their bench players that, they're not going to be rocking up and getting 25 minutes every game like they were in the Blitz. I think it was really good for them to get that sort of exposure. I think, as you sort of mentioned, Boz, Flynn Cameron was someone everyone's very excited for. I'd like to see where he's actually positioned, because unlike other game formats, as we mentioned, there's point guard, small forward, shooting guard, power forward, and center, and there's no crossover. You're not getting a power forward center. You're not getting a shooting guard, point guard. It's one role only. And I am interested if Flynn Cameron's going to be named. He was sort of named on the team sheet there as a small forward. So I'm interested if he's going to be in game day squad as a small forward, because we know he sort of he played the point guard position for United. So what is he actually considered in this game mode? But I think that would be interesting in the sense that small forward position, from what I learned last year, is probably the most underwhelming position. So that is probably maybe the position that if Cameron ends up being this starting point guard that's feeding DJ, feeding Bryce, but he's considered a small forward in game day squad. As I said, I'll have to go check that out. Maybe someone that you could look at. I mean, to be fair, if you're playing on that team and you're just the guy that passes to these shooters, you're going to get a lot of assists every game.
I can tell you, Flynn Cameron is a shooting guard in game day squad.
Interesting, sort of the middle ground there. That's a very hard position, because then you are contending with Bryce Cotton, DJ, 3J, a lot of really high tier shooting guards. So, yeah, a bit unfortunate there. But yeah, as Boz said, we'll keep our eyes out to see who stands out of probably the Cotton, Cheatham, and Harrell. I reckon will be the big three from there.
Yeah,
Boz,
and just quickly,
agree with that three?
Oh yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, if we had to rank them, I think Cotton's still going to be the number one usage player on that team. I think Trez will come second, just naturally through offensive rebounds, putbacks, and just demanding the ball inside. I think it could be tight between Cheatham and DJ 3J. I don't see Cheatham being someone who kind of would want to kind of demand the ball too much. I think he'll just kind of fall into his points, his rebounds, his steals, his blocks, etc. But yeah, if you have a Cotton, I'm not saying don't put him in your team. Absolutely put him in your team, lock him in. But it'll just be interesting to see if there's other kind of viable options as the season goes on.
Yeah, probably not week one for the bye, but yeah.
Well, absolutely not, no. Although, if you want to give me a head start, sure, throw him in.
Yeah, chuck him in. All right, boys, nice chat with the 36ers. We'll now move on to the Brisbane Bullets. Now, I'm a Brisbane Lions fan, but lots of people assume that I do live up there in Queensland. I'm an old Fitzroy boy, so Victorian bred. I'm more of a United man myself, but always do have a soft spot for all the Brisbane teams. So Casey Prather, really enjoyed owning him in Supercoach last year. Love the way that he goes about it. Will he be as relevant in GDS? We'll talk about him. We can see there in the incoming Oklahoma City Thunder. So some NBA imports here. Someone from Sacramento State University. Boz, talk us through the Brisbane team here. Anything that stands out in regards to ins and outs for the squad going into this season?
Yeah, so I guess you touched on it. They got Alex Dukas, who's an Australian who played for OKC. He won a championship and will receive an NBA ring, so congratulations to him, albeit I don't think he played many minutes last season in the NBA. But, I think he comes back to Australia with, maybe just the want to play more. So I don't know. I don't know what he'll do for that team, but I think a few big names on that board are some of their imports that they've brought in. So obviously Jalen Adams coming across from Sydney Kings. We all know what he can do at the peak of his powers, an MVP for the Sydney Kings, I think 3 years ago, if my memory serves correctly. And, probably a downy on his respect last year. I think he had some really good games, but was a bit injury prone last year. So I guess if he comes to Brisbane with a bit of a better attitude, I know Brisbane Lions have notorious history of mending AFL players that have some injuries over their time. So who knows? Brisbane could be a really good fit for him. But the one I want to talk about is Javon Freeman-Liberty. So this man in the G League has put up some tremendous numbers, similar to what Kendrick Davis was doing a couple of years back. And he also was really good at the last Summer League. So he played for the Chicago Bulls in the Summer League just gone. And albeit he's more of just a scorer, he's shown in a couple of blitz games that he can actually add a little bit more. So there was a blitz game where he actually had 50 Supercoach. And I know we keep going back to Supercoach, and I'm sure we'll get over that eventually. But it would be different in game day, the scoring. But he had 20-plus points. I think it was 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and then 4 steals as well. So not only is he a really good scorer, but I think he's probably got the potential, probably not getting 4 steals a game or even 4 assists a game, to be honest, but at least we know he can do it. And that's what Verns was touching on. We watch the Blitz to look at imports, and we want to see what they can do. And it looks like on any given day, Freeman Liberty can actually give you more than just 25 points. He can actually give you some rebounds, some assists, and potentially some steals as well. So I think he's the one that's going to really impress people in Brisbane this year.
Beautiful shout, mate. Beautiful. Vernsy, what are your thoughts on the Brisbane Bullets?
Yeah, honestly, Freeman was the big standout for me as well. I'm pretty sure when he put that game together, probably did it in 28 or so minutes, which is a decent amount of minutes played. But if there's something we know about Stu Lash, he works his imports to the bone. We saw it last year with Prather. He was playing 35 minutes minimum, if not 38 every sort of week. So he usually runs a tight rotation. His imports get big minutes. And when I look at that Brisbane squad, the second squad is pretty underdone. Not to be rude to those players. I'm sure they will be great, but there's other teams you look at and you think they're a really well-made squad. If their second team comes on, it can contest the guys that started the game. I look at that Brisbane second team and there's a lot of question marks there. But I look at their first team and they're as good, if not better, than most other starting teams in the comp. It is an insane starting roster. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're going to see Prather, Adams, Freeman Liberty, Dukas, Harrison, all playing, 33 minutes sort of minimum every single week. And then these bench guys, maybe getting a few minutes, but a very tight rotation with those guys, which is great for fantasy sports. The more time our guys are on the pitch, the more opportunity they have to score the ball, rebound the ball, steal the ball, just get stats on the board, which accumulate to, fantasy points. So we love a team that just keeps a tight rotation. It makes it a lot more predictable with your players. So, yeah, I think Brisbane's going to be a really good team to be choosing fantasy players from. I think, honestly, any one of those starters any given week could be really good, especially the imports. I think, as you said, Freeman Liberty stands out for you, but Prather he's a jet. Prather is insanely good. He will definitely be one of the best power forwards in this game. Adams will be one of the best guards in this game. And as you mentioned earlier, Boz, they play at a high tempo, so there's a lot of points to be scored on them, but there's also a lot of points to be scored for them. And as I sort of mentioned, with Tasmanian, that Tasmania play a slower style, meaning less points, less opportunity. Brisbane, they're going to play a high tempo style. There's going to be a lot of opportunity, a lot of score to happen, and we just love that. So I think Brisbane will be a really good fantasy ground for us.
Beautiful, mate. Beautiful. All right, let's go on to our next team then, and it is the Cairns Taipans. So probably the first thing that stands out for me here, a couple of blokes that have departed in Taron Armstrong to the Golden State Warriors in the NBA, and Tanner Groves. I had him in traditional Supercoach last year and was a bit of a pod pick for me at times and really enjoyed owning him. You can see some of the usual names here that are contracted, like your Sam Wardenberg. Boz, take us through this list, mate. Anything that stands out with the Taipans, looking at some of the names that we've got here.
Yeah, firstly, I do want to shout out Tanner Groves. I think a lot of people wanted to see him back at Cairns. He was a bit of like a heart and soul type player, real passionate. Obviously chose to go elsewhere, probably go for a bit more coin in Japan, as they seem to do. So, good on him. But I think in terms of incoming players, because that's what we want to be talking about, I really think this team is Jack McVeigh's team. So coming back from the United States, where he had a 2-way contract with the Houston Rockets. He's getting paid $1 million a season, I believe. So they've really invested heavily in Jack McVeigh. So, between himself and I think Sam Wardenberg, who one of the most loyal basketballers you'll see. I mean, he's had some really horrid years in the past at Cairns, and he's just stuck by him and stuck by Adam Ford and whatnot. So I think between Wardenberg and McVeigh, they're going to be your really high usage players. They had signed a guard import-wise, who has now actually left. So he initially signed, I think his name was Hagens. He looked really good defensively, and I think we would have been speaking about him on this podcast due to that kind of steal and block kind of 5 points premium that you get. He's actually departed due to visa reasons, and they've signed a bloke called Andrew Andrews. Now, if I've learned something in my time, it's never trust a bloke with two first names.
No way.
Or if anything, the same for two names. So don't know much about him. Looks like he come from Lithuania. Didn't really average too much there. So I really think it's Jack McVeigh and Wardenberg's team again this year, which is great to see some local New Zealand and Australian products, running an offense for a team. Would you agree, Verns? I think that's probably.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm sure we probably saw that in the little, blurb that it had there. But I think the biggest thing that stands out is when it says contracted players. There's only 5 players there that are contracted. Like, there is a big shift in Cairns. Like, this is not the same team from last year. Last year, if you had a matchup against Cairns, you were always targeting players going into Cairns because you just knew you're going to blow them out of the water and they were going to score some great points. And it wasn't a great year for Cairns overall, unfortunately. But this is not the same team. They have gone out guns firing in this preseason and they have brought home some trophies. Jack McVeigh, as you mentioned, insane pickup from them. The only thing I do think there is, I don't know how fantasy relevant he's going to be. He's someone that is score heavy. He's maybe get you a couple of rebounds a game, a few rebounds a game, doesn't really get assists, doesn't really get blocks, and doesn't really get steals. He puts the ball in the bucket, which is great, for the team. And I think, that's what Cairns, I've got here. They know what they were getting when they signed him, but it means he won't be the most fantasy relevant because I just don't think he spreads the stat sheet enough to keep up with these, top echelon. I think he's top echelon in the league, but top echelon fantasy players. Wardenberg, on the other hand, now that's a guy that does a little bit of everything. He went over the turkey in the offseason, and my Lord, did he tear it up. Absolutely crushed it. Got named first team. I think it's BSN first team. I think that's the name of their league. He was really, really good, putting out some insanely good numbers. He's someone that, we saw last season, he really developed that 3-point shot. He was really, really good from the 3-point line. The year before, we were sort of all a bit hesitant whenever he was shooting a 3, but last year he really came down and just stamped his name on the competition. So yeah, he looks great. He will get rebounds. He does get blocks. He does get steals. He is a facilitating big man as well. I forget the NBA player that does it. Oh my goodness.
Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, Jokic. There we go. So, Jokic is obviously the absolute premium gold standard. It's sort of he's a light version of that. He's going to do all those things, not to that level, but he does everything. So that's what you love to see from a player. And someone I'm very excited for, someone that I'm very happy to run in my team. I think if I do happen to have him because I had him last year, so I will be running him when I get the opportunity. And I think Schofield is probably the big import that stands out from me. Obviously, they brought Marcus Lee in, who's a real utility guy. He's there to just lock down the key, be defensive, get rebounds, which, to be fair, rebounds in this format are worth a lot more points. But he's not really going to score the ball. He's not really going to steal the ball. He's not going to assist, unfortunately. So he's going to be a nice rock for them. So I think Schofield and Wardenberg are the 2 guys in this team that I think will be the most fantasy relevant guys.
Can I just touch on Marcus? Can I just touch on Marcus Lee real quickly? He averaged 1.7 blocks last year in only 17 minutes for United. So I'm not saying he's going to play 30 minutes, but if Cairns run him out there 25 minutes a night, I think we could see him average over that 2 blocks per game mark. And that's could be an easy 15 points that he might be getting. And he barely turns the ball over because it's never in his hand. So he could be a real, one that kind of surprises us. But I do think he's definitely down in that pecking order when it comes to the fantasy scores.
Saying that something Lee does is foul, though. That man loves to foul. So obviously get punished pretty hard in this game mode for fouling. So, yes, definitely, I think more positives in the game mode for him, but also more negatives as well, unfortunately.
Like it. The only question I'd have, given the fact that there's been so much turnover, do you think it's going to take a little while for these blokes to actually gel together and be able to work as a unit? Do you guys have any concerns when it comes to that, given the big changeover in the list?
Look, I think 100%. And the biggest thing for Cairns here as well is we saw a lot of preseason games and they did not have their starting 5 for most of those games. They had Smith off with the Australian team playing over in the Asia Cup. McVeigh was over with the Asia team as well, so he wasn't gelling with them. Schofield, he got in played and then got injured, I'm pretty sure. I think it was just a niggle, but they decided not to play him the rest of the preseason game. So how does that affect it? Any game you watched with Cairns basically was like Galloway at the helm with, Higgins, Titchener. They were like the main guys in the team, and those are going to be like their not even their sixth man off the bench. That's going to be like their seventh and eighth man off the bench. So unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of a look at them. And yes, they're definitely one of the teams that didn't get as much time to gel in the preseason.
Well, season-long competition, though, so maybe we get a bit of that data, have a close look, and then start to play maybe a few of these blokes in our squads. All right, next up, we have the Illawarra Hawks. Now, you can see here in the contracted section, a lot more names, isn't there, compared to what we just saw there for Cairns, and a lot of familiar names here. You got your Peatling, your Froling, Blanchfield, Tyler Harvey as well, and Will Hickey. A bit of an off and on season last year, but he is someone that I actually don't mind in GDS talking about those potential multiple scoring avenues. So we'll talk about him in a little bit. Boz, take us off again. Anything that you're noticing here with the ins and the outs?
I think first and foremost, I'm pretty disappointed with the Hawks, to be honest. Like, they've gone from winning the chip to probably, I don't think they make the playoffs, in my opinion. Now, I know they had a really good coach in Tatum, and I know they've got Harvey and Hickey and Swiker LeBullock who have all stuck around. So they've got that core there. I just don't think they're good enough. I don't think they signed as potent import players that I thought. I think JaVale McGee, great. He's a great signing for marketing reasons, and he put up a really good season in Puerto Rico, but I think the Puerto Rican league is quite average, I'm led to believe. So, look, I just don't think they're going to be very good. But in saying that, Hickey, Justin Tatum has come out and said he is my starting point guard.
Yes.
So last season we saw when Hickey starts, he did really well. When Trey Carl was injured, because he was quite an injury-prone player, and Hickey would start, Hickey would put up monster numbers. I think a lot of people actually end up captaining him on a couple of double game weeks towards the end of last year in Supercoach, just because he had that role locked down. And when Trey Carl was not there, he did a lot. And where we are now, Trey Carl was signed in Japan. So I think Hickey's a really good option. Jonah Bolden actually surprised me. He's played a really good preseason, albeit JaVale McGee hasn't been there. But because Froling has done his Achilles and won't be on the team for a lot of this next season, if at all, Jonah Bolden's going to have to put up some big numbers if they do want to be competitive. So, again, I wouldn't really trust anyone other than Hickey and Harvey and maybe McGee, depending on the minutes. But, if you had someone like a Jonah Bolden and he was the only power forward for whatever reason, bronze cards you had, I would not be against you, obviously, putting him in your team. Again, not in round one because they don't play, but yeah.
I like it. And that's another thing to take into account with these cards as well. If a player does become injured, then you've got the option to trade it off or hold on to it, because you know that that player is hopefully going to be long-term in your side and in your squad. So that is just another element to the GDS game. Vernsy, your thoughts on the Hawks going into this year?
Yeah, look, I mean, you might call that a bit of a bold statement saying they're not going to make playoffs, but I don't disagree with you. I look at that lineup and it doesn't blow me out of the water. I actually think the way they went is it looks like they went backwards a little bit. I mean, obviously Sam Froling getting injured is huge. He was a staple in their team last year and he's injured. They've brought in his brother Harry, but obviously he's just come back from a long-term injury as well. So it's definitely not the same there. And yeah, I don't like their power forward line. Trey Kell was elite. I don't think McLaughlin is at that level, unfortunately. So yeah, I do think they're going to struggle. And I do think on average, every other team looks like their lineups are better. Like from last year, they've all taken a step upwards. It does look like Hawks maybe took a bit of a step backwards. So I think it's going to be a very hard year for them. I do also agree that when I look at their team, nobody jumps out to me. With the exclusion of Hickey, who does do a bit of everything, the man will get so many steals a game, and he will attack the ring. He doesn't really score threes, so he doesn't get the bonus points there, unfortunately. But I think he makes up for it with a high level of assists, high level of steals, and he will still score buckets. Outside of that, though, yeah, there's nobody that screams out in that team like a pick-me. JaVale McGee, he might be the guy. He might be the other fantasy relevant guy that comes in, but I'm not too sure there, unfortunately. I do want to see them. Unfortunately, we didn't see any of him in the preseason, so we don't really know. I think they're going over and they're playing the Cup in week 1 as to why they have a bye. I forget what match they're playing. But we'll at least get, look at that, and hopefully that'll help us make a decision. And at the end of the day, we don't have to rush into any of these Illawarra players. You don't have to force them in. There's plenty of known commodities that are still in this league, or people that we've already seen in the preseason. So you can take a couple of weeks, look at the data, and then make a decision that, yeah, you know what, these couple of Hawks players, these are the guys we want. So, yeah.
Very nice, mate. And I agree with you, Boz. As soon as I heard that news about Will Hickey, the ears absolutely pricked up, and had a little bit of a squeeze on the trade market and auction market there as well, because cards do fluctuate in value during the season. So great effort there, guys, with the Hawks. On to the next team, and it is Melbourne United. So we do see a couple of changes here. Milton Doyle, I've always been a fan of Milton Doyle just as a player. I don't know if it's the T-shirt. I was a bit of a T-shirt man because I don't have the biggest guns going around. So try to hide that with the T-shirt there. I don't know if it's why I like him so much, but has been a little bit of movement here. Apart from them, you can see Krislovic has also come across from the Jack Jumpers as well. We also see a couple of other signings here, but departed. We've already talked about Lee gone, Flynn Cameron's gone, Ian Clark, and Jack White. Really enjoyed him playing in the NBL last season, so he's going to be a big loss. And even Daly has made a move to the Sydney Kings. Boz, what are you thinking about Melbourne United, mate?
Yeah, I think when the off-season kind of started and there wasn't many signings happening, I kind of was a bit disappointed with Melbourne's list. But as the preseason is gone on, it's Melbourne United. They just find a way to pick absolute gems. It looks like Edwards is an absolute beast at centre. Like, with no Jack White there and no Marcus Lee, like, he's going to be that centre they roll out for 28 to 30 minutes a night, and he's just going to mop up rebound after rebound after rebound. I think he's pretty much doubled in every game that he's played in the preseason. Not that we get those extra bonus points, but again, if anyone's getting 10 rebounds, depending on if they're offensive or defensive, you're getting points. So he looked really, really good. Someone that could block a shot as well. He's a monster of a man. If you haven't had a look at him, you'll see him as soon as you watch a United game. He stands out. Doyle was a great pickup. Walker, this small point guard they've got from the University of Michigan, he really, really stood out. Although Shea Illy missed all the preseason, and pretty much Chris Goulding as well. A lot of people, if they've been tracking the Blitz, will see that Tanner Krebs has done heaps. But again, this could be a bit of fool's gold just because Chris Goulding has barely played. And I think when Shea Illy plays, I know one of them out of Walker and Illy will probably have to come off the bench. There's probably going to be just too many mouths to feed in that guard rotation that Krebs will probably play, but I don't think he'll be as valuable as he's been in the preseason in terms of his scoring. But yeah, Edwards, he's the one that I kind of had a big tick next to on my run sheet.
Are you expecting Illy to get much time?
That's a good question. I mean, he's pretty much one concussion away from retirement, I think. It's one of those ones where it happens so frequently that I think he actually went and saw, I don't know as far as I can tell, but I think he went and saw a specialist or something about it, or just had talks about the return to play, and they did tick it off. But you can pretty much book him in for 2 a year. It seems at the moment. The way he plays, he's a high hustle player. He's always hitting the deck. He's probably copping an elbow, copping a stray knee. Gets to the ring a lot. That's probably what the issue is. Some of the big guys probably try to reject him and then whack him in the face, and that leads to a concussion. So I think he might be the one that comes off the bench, at least to start the season. I think Walker's shown that he's more than capable of running the point starting between him and Doyle. So, yeah, Illy might be the one that actually regresses, and Walker might end up being a really good player.
Yeah, interesting, because you look at a team like United and they've got that first week double, and players may need to make that decision. Do you play someone like a Shea Illy and have almost 2 bites at the cherry, or do you just go safe with a star single game player? These are the decisions that we need to make with GDS. So, yeah, really good discussion on Illy there, Boz. Verns, anything sticking out to you in regards to United this year, mate?
Yeah, look, Ignited, as you mentioned, double game, week 1, super important team, a team I'd love to get a few cards for. Jesse Edwards, yes, I want his card. Look, something that you may undervalue, but it might not seem like a big change, but rebounds going from 1 in Supercoach to 2, that might not seem big, but anytime the multiplier, anytime you're increasing something from 1, it's huge, because going 1 to 2, it might not seem like a big deal, but it's a double multiplier. All of a sudden, even if they were getting a decent amount of rebounds last year with low points, it didn't look like it would accumulate too much. You do that in this game mode, and it's going to be a lot of points. So, yeah, he looks like someone that I think will get a lot of rebounds, a lot of blocks, and, yeah, maybe not that many points, but when points in reality are the lowest scoring sort of metric in this game, it's not that relevant. So he's someone I definitely want to get a card for if I get the opportunity. I think, you yourself, DR, should be happy with United having Krebs, because as soon as Goulding chooses to retire, I think he is such a good replacement. He has really shown it with these games Goulding has missed, that he is really coming into his own. And the second he gets that opportunity, he is going to be a dynamite fantasy player, because not only is he automatic from the 3-point line, he does get involved in getting steals and getting rebounds. So he will be someone that's very relevant in fantasy, I think, once he gets the opportunity. Milton Doyle, we already talked about at the start of the season, someone that I luckily already own because he's a returning import. So you can guarantee he's going to be slapped in my starting team for week 1. And yeah, Walker and Illy end up being a bit interesting because they do share minutes. We sort of talked about it with Brisbane. We definitely prefer the fantasy players that get bulk minutes. So anytime you're splitting minutes and you're kind of sharing that with someone, it eats into the potential fantasy points you could be getting. And it might be better for the team overall, but for fantasy, not so much.
Love it, mate. Now, it is interesting as well that you mentioned someone like Krebs. At the moment, that card may not be as valuable, but as you said, if Goulding was to go, Krebs stays there, then all of a sudden that card's value, boom, 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 starts to go up. So if you are a bit of an investor, that may be the type of card that you could be actually looking to get into your teams now, not necessarily using from week to week this season, but just stow him away maybe for in the future. So love that you brought up that point as well, mate.
Yeah, and even if you may not use it, but in situations where Goulding misses a game here or there, then slap it in your team. He's good enough. So
yeah,
absolutely,
I think also on a double game week, because we only get the highest score, there's the potential for United to have the luxury to rest the Goulding on a second game, and then Tanner Krebs steps into the starting lineup, and then he might pop off, and then that's the score you get, because even though he's played 2 games, you get his highest score. So there's definitely a world where I do see Krebs being viable, but you just want to have that guarantee. And I don't think we have it just yet.
Love it, mate. Love it. All right, boys. On to the next one. It is the New Zealand Breakers. Now, Boz, I know that you tend to roll with the old PJC pick in your Twitter handle, so I'm just going to let you completely take over this year, mate.
Well, that's all I really want to say. PJC, tick, tick, tick. When I saw he re-sign, honestly, I was over the moon, because he was someone that obviously with his suspension towards the end of the season last season, it looked like he was gone. The way he was talking about the organization didn't seem like he really wanted to extend the future. But, I guess money and opportunity and I guess lifestyle talks, I think he fits in really well with that New Zealand lifestyle, living in Auckland and things like that. So it was great. And he's locked in for 2 years now. So there's that thing again. And if you can get a PJC of any rarity, even one of those higher rarities, it's not always guaranteed they hang around for year 2, but it looks like he'll be locked in for next year. So he's definitely not a card that I want because I'm obsessed with him. But at the same time, in terms of an investing standpoint, I would really love a PJC card as well. But look, on the Breakers, they brought in Brockington. He played with Mitch Creek in Vancouver, and he was the MVP of the Blitz. So albeit PJC only played, I think, 3 minutes in one of the games because he got knocked to the ribs, he really stepped up. So he shows that he can really be that probably second option on the Breakers this year. And then they've also signed a guy by the name of Rob Baker II, a big centre, similar vibe to Jesse Edwards. I think he rebounds really well. He has had a really delayed preseason. I think he was playing for a select USA team in like a World Cup qualifier or something. So he's only just come across to New Zealand as of the last 4 or 5 days. But he did play a game, albeit against, I think, a Japanese team. But from all reports, I think Pleb posted it. He doubled as well. So he's looking like a really strong candidate that can, probably not score you 20 points, but he'll get you those double-digit points. But then that premium, those blocks and rebounds, I think he can do really well as well. And to be honest, I think anyone that they signed in Taco Fall was probably going to be a good thing for the Breakers. So I'm glad that he's gone. And PJC's happy because I'm looking forward to a big year for the Breakers.
That was my other question here I had for you, mate. How you feeling about the departure of Big Taco? So you've made that pretty clear, I think. Vernsy, what do you got to talk about us in regards to the New Zealand Breakers, my man?
Yeah, look, they're definitely a better team this year. I think the imports they got look better quality, and I think they're going to definitely compete a lot more. So, yeah, I'm very excited for that. PJC is obviously fantasy royalty. He is so good at doing everything. High level of assists, will score you plenty of points, gets a lot of steals. Yeah, look, he's not going to get a rebound or a block, but he does the other thing at such a, the other few things at such a high level that it's just premium. So he's someone that any double game week, you're almost slapping him in your team. Like, that's just how good he is. Once again, one of those carryover players for me. So, already got my point guard locked in with him, and
Nice.
Doyle with my shooting guard, feeling very happy there.
Let's make a trade, Verns.
But yeah, I think on top of that, yeah, Rob Baker looks really good. Brockington looks very good. So yeah, I think we've got a few options from New Zealand to throw in our teams.
I'll tell you what, Boz, I'm going to make a mission next couple of days. I'm going to get you a silver PJC. That's your collection, mate. I think you need it at minimum silver, But hopefully during the year, we know what the goal is, mate. A diamond PJC for you, my friend. We're going to make it happen. We will absolutely
100%. Make like a road to glory, road to PJC.
Absolutely. Look, I really enjoy watching the Breakers play. I don't know if it's just the pink jersey or what it is, but PJC has always been a favourite of mine as well, and an absolute gun when it comes to fantasy. So, Boz, I'm hoping that you can get your hands on a PJC sooner rather than later, my friend. All right, the next team we're going to take a look at here is the Perth Wildcats. Now, when I think about the Perth Wildcats, there's two blokes that pop into my head, and that's Bryce Cotton and Keanu Pinder. And if we look at the departed here, we can see that Pinder is now gone. We've already talked about Bryce Cotton gone to the 36ers. So I can't believe what I'm looking at here. Boz, were you as surprised as me to see both Pinder and Cotton depart the Wildcats?
To be honest, no. I think with Pinder, I don't think really gave him an opportunity that he was expecting. I think, we consider Pinder the second option on that team, but he was pretty much coming off the bench most of the year, or he was only playing like 20 minutes a game. He was a really hard fantasy asset to hold on to last year because you knew the ceiling was so bloody high, but at the same time, you just can't trust John really. So I wasn't surprised that he left. I thought he would go anywhere to just get out of Perth, to be honest. With Bryce Cotton, obviously someone who plays for a team for so long, it's always a shock when they leave. The fact that he came back to the NBL was surprising. I think, he came out and made it pretty clear that if I'm playing in the NBL next year, it's going to be only for Perth. And then I guess, words are only something and reality is reality. So it was weird to see him back in the NBL. But again, I guess, you can only do so much at a club. I don't blame people for leaving organizations. The whole loyalty thing can only go so far, I think, when it comes to professional athletes. They have to make their money in one way or another. So I wasn't really surprised, to be honest. But what I was surprised as was how good their off-season's been since then. I think it started off really slowly, and there was a bit of a meme going around on Twitter that Perth were literally going to sign nobody because they weren't signing anyone. And then all of a sudden, they just go, bang, we're just going to drop money on JLA. We're just going to drop some money, which is huge. We're going to, retain Doolittle, retain Windler, two really serviceable players that will have an increased role. And then just recently, like the last week, they've just signed this absolute stat stuffer from the G League of last year. I think his name's Mason Jones. He's averages, and I've got him here in front of me. He averaged last year in the G League 23.5 points a game, 5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, 1.2 steals, not too many blocks, 4 turnovers, albeit I guess when you are the number one guy on a G League team, you are going to be turning the ball over.
Yeah.
It's going to happen, but Jesus, that's more than what Kendrick Davis was putting up before he came to the league. Albeit, I think there's a lot more mouths to feed than when Kendrick Davis came to Adelaide. I think he kind of had the keys to that team. But this Mason Jones guy, he could be a very viable fantasy option. But yeah, really excited for Perth. And I obviously did speak about how high I am on Windler, just being that really solid kind of stat stuffer in all departments this season in game day fantasy.
Talk about stat stuffing. That is amazing, those averages, isn't it, mate? If he could somehow just go close to transferring that across, he'll be an absolute scoring machine. Vernsy, thoughts on the Wildcats, brother?
Yeah, Perth have some really, really viable options. Obviously, we just talked about Jones, someone that we're all pretty excited to see how that translates. Windler, I think we're super excited for in the sense as well that usually imports always seem to take their second year is always better. Their second year is always better in our league. Doolittle obviously showed that last year. Last year was his second year, was it? Was that correct?
Yes.
Yes, it was his second year. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, year one, it was pretty mediocre. Year two, absolute premium. Just tore it up. And yeah, I think Windler, we could see a very similar thing. And we sort of saw that in the Blitz already. He is ready to, just take it by the reins. So super excited for, their point guard, Jones, Windler in the small forward position, which I mentioned is probably the most bare position in GDS. So it's going to be very nice. Doolittle in the power forward position, and then JLA in the center position. Like, we have some really, really good options from Perth. So very exciting team.
Get around. I think they'll all new era.
New era, and I think they'll all get involved. Not to knock Bryce Cotton, no, he's an unbelievable player, but I think you saw last year they literally ran every single play through him. So hopefully this Mason Jones guy is a bit more of a facilitator and gets a lot more of the plays involved.
Yeah, I think that's another thing to obviously Windler as well. I think more opportunity for him to use the ball, Not every offense is going through Bryce. And just with that, Boz, did you end up seeing I was like the podcast Bryce does where he talked about obviously leaving Perth. Did you see that at all, or?
I think I saw snippets of it. It seemed like it was a bit of a nasty breakup.
Oh, look, I don't know if I wouldn't say the word nasty, but obviously you mentioned it's interesting when players leave the team, but more or less, I guess the moral of that story was he didn't actively choose to leave. I think neither party was in the wrong. Perth needed him to sign. Before he signed, he wanted to potentially explore options coming off an MVP year, finally free of contract, and he'd been under contract for however long it was now. Premium time for him to sort of explore the market and see what other options were available. And Perth didn't really want to wait for him to explore the market because they didn't want to be in a position where, unfortunately, all the good imports have already been signed, sort of situation. So they decided to make the proactive move of letting him go to get ahead of the curb. So, I don't think either team I don't think either party was at fault. I think they're both looking after their best interests. And it just sort of, it's how the cards fell at the end of the day. But yeah, very excited that he stayed in the league with us.
I know they're a very passionate bunch of supporters, Perth. What do you think his reception's going to be, his first game back at Perth against the old mob? Will there be some cheers, some clapping, or I don't know if NBL fans boo, but what do you think his reception's going to be like? Because he's an absolute club champion.
Yeah, I mean, that is a huge question mark because I think anyone with common sense that has heard his side of the story, or I don't even think it's his side of the story. I think, both sides of the story sort of add up to the same story. So anyone that's like properly, put in like the time in to look as to what's happened and unfolded here, I think clapping would be appropriate. He's still a club champion and he has brought you absolute glory. And I think in an ideal world for him, if the Wildcats held on a bit longer, he could have retained a position at that club. So I don't think it's it's not his fault, and I don't think you should be giving him any negative feedback for all the glory he's brought your club. But saying that, just because that's a logical thing to do doesn't mean fans are going to do it.
Very true. All right. Let's move on to our next team. Then we've got a few to go, boys, and we are almost towards the end. The Southeast Melbourne Magic. Now, I am a United fan, but I've still got a bit of a soft spot here for Southeast Melbourne. Angus Glover was a player that I started with in traditional Supercoach last year and was a really nice cash cow. So obviously there's no salary cap here, or the players' values don't go up and down, but just wanted to give a quick little shout out there to Angus Glover. We know that Nathan Sobey also moved across there last year. Boz, anything you notice with the ins and the outs for Southeast Melbourne? What do you think their season's going to look like this year, mate?
Not very good, I don't think. I don't really like. I don't really like a couple of their selections. I think the unicorn, as Verns pronounced before, I think, is it Blekenberg or Blakenberg? One of the two. I think he has the highest ceiling of the imports they've brought in. He's a bit of a facilitator from a big position. So he's like a small forward, power forward that can pass the ball, as Vern said, Nikola Jokic style. I think he's the one, if you were wanting to play an import from their team. I've never liked Sobey, but he just proved that he can still put up somewhat fantasy relevance. I think the big one for me is Owen Foxwell. I know it says in this depth chart here that Maldonado, one of their imports, is going to start at point guard. I don't believe that. I think Owen Foxwell has somewhat of the keys to that position this season, at least to start. I think Josh King really likes him. I think he buys in defensively and offensively. He's had a really good preseason. He's shown not only did he play in the Australian Asian team, Verns, I believe? Yeah, so not only, he's getting caught up to the Australian, albeit not the first team, but kind of like the representative team that qualifies us for things. And I think Foxwell is a decent shout. I had Foxwell last year when Derek Walton Jr. went down, and he was putting up perfectly fine Supercoach scores, like within the 20s, mid-20s to low 30s. So Owen Foxwell could be a shout if you have, a bronze kind of version of him. And I only say that because I actually packed him in my starter pick. So he's someone I'll be starting in round one. But apart from that, like John Brown III, don't know much about him. I think he's quite old. This Maldonado guy, don't know much about him. I just don't really like their squad, unfortunately. But what we do know is Josh King, he coaches really hard and he demands a lot from his players. And I guess like any good team, if players buy into system, it could actually lead to some success. So I don't want to write off Southeast Melbourne too early, but on individual players, I don't really like their roster. But I'm happy to be proven wrong.
Like it, mate. Not much confidence, but you never, ever know. Vernsy, do you share the same sentiments as Boz when it comes to the fortunes of Southeast Melbourne this season?
I actually think they're going to do really well. I think this might be a weird take for people, but it's not traditional what Southeast Melbourne have done. You look at all the other teams, and they've brought in some really big name players, where Southeast Melbourne have brought in some real question marks, like people we don't really know. Because what King has done, he's got that more of a European style coaching, and he's gone ahead and he's grabbed Maldonado. He's got the unicorn. He's brought them over from the Europe leagues, and what he's trying to do is he's trying to do a next up mentality. And what I mean by that is you get on the court and you play hard for 4 minutes, and the second you're gassed, next guy on. Let's go. Only unfortunate thing for us is that's not great for fantasy. We want the guys that be on the court for long periods of time. Like we mentioned before with Brisbane, I think they'll be similar to Brisbane in the sense that they're going to play at a very high tempo. It's going to be a lot of offense because they're going to play so hard defensively. They're either getting steals or they're just letting you get to the bucket. And then offensively, they're looking to push the pace, get to the bucket, run fast breaks, and just move that ball. So I think they're going to be a high-octane team. There's going to be plenty of scoring on the board. Playing against them, there's going to be plenty of scoring. Playing for them, there's plenty of scoring. But unfortunately, playing for them, I think because of the way King's going to coach them, there's going to be a large rotation. And that large rotation isn't good for fantasy, unfortunately. I think it's going to catch teams off guard. I think they're going to be a lot better than what other teams think because it's a more unique style and a style that we haven't really seen in Australian basketball. But I think this high defensive, as I mentioned, high octane style, I think it could still be really good. I think Phoenix could generally make a run. And Josh King did that last year. Even last year, when you look at the Phoenix lineup, you could probably go, especially with, Derek Walton Jr. injured, you could have said they had a pretty mediocre lineup last year, and they're making it to the top 4. So, I'd like his coaching style, and I think they'll be a good team in reality. I think they will contest. As I said, fantasy-wise, it's not great for us, and because of that, I think there'll be a wide spread of points, so there's not going to be these real standout guys. Now, the Unicorn, someone I definitely wanted to talk about, but as Boz said, I think that's the highest ceiling guy, and that's just because he plays like a guard, but he's built like a center. He's this huge guy that can do all the things centers do, but he does all the things guards do as well. He does everything. And I think being in this Phoenix team as well, that's going to have, I think, a lot of steals. I think this will be their games by nature will have a lot of steals because of the way they play. There'll be a lot of shots going up, and shots going up is actually a really good thing as well. It almost doesn't matter if the ball goes in. If you're having, if you're having a game where you're having 100 shots versus 140 shots, it doesn't matter if it goes in or not, because if it misses, you're getting rebounds, and that's still fantasy points. So, and you're not getting negatively impacted for missing shots. So, yeah, I think Phoenix will be a team that you target against to get players in for because of this play style. But I do think there is potential for them to have also, I think, some real spike candidates in there as well. As you mentioned, Foxwell gets plenty of steals. I think probably the Unicorn being the number one guy. I think Hunter actually looked really good for the preseason games we saw. He was very involved in the assists, getting plenty of rebounds, scoring the ball, hitting 3-point shots. Look, probably when we look at the quality of centers that we have in the league, he might be one that flies under the radar, but I think one that I'd be willing to play on double weeks and maybe easier matchups. So, yeah.
Like it, mate. Well, I've currently got Hunter in my squad. I haven't got too many big centers at the moment, so I'm glad that you said that, mate. It gives me a little bit more faith that I can at least run with him for now until I can upgrade on that one, buddy. So nice talk there in the fence. It's going to be really interesting to see how they go this season. I'm not sure. I'm still sitting on the fence at the moment, I think. Let's get to the Sydney Kings. Now, some big departures, but a very, very big in, none bigger than that man, KD, Kendrick Davis. Alex Tui goes, Cam Oliver, who I really enjoyed playing last year. A bit of a funny season for him, wasn't it? I had high hopes early on, but then the court time wasn't as much as what I was expecting anyway, which was a little bit disappointing. And the other one there, who's obviously departed, is Jalen Adams. So, Boz, do you like the off-season moves that Sydney have made here? Do you think they've improved on last season, mate?
I think they have improved in the sense that they've got that pass-first point guard in Dellavedova. And to be fair, Kendrick Davis, while he scores his 25 a game, he also racks up assists as well. Interesting dynamic. I'm not sure how that's going to work. Like, are they going to be on the same court for a lot of the time? I don't know. Like, there's going to be a kind of strategic way they play them together, because we know Xavier Cooks as well likes to facilitate the ball. So they're an interesting team for me. I do think Kendrick Davis is the man. Cooks, disappointing end to the year getting done for some illicit substances. So I think he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder, wants to prove that he can be there to redeem himself. The one notable thing is Lepepe in the preseason has done his ACL, and he would have kind of been that backup center / power forward. So I think now that center, now, sorry if I'm wrong, but is it, I pronounce it Suarez, or not Luis Suarez, but I think it's Suarez, the Brazilian. I think he now becomes somewhat relevant in terms of he's going to be holding down multiple minutes. But we do know with Sydney, they'll very easily shift a Galloway up to power forward and just play Cooks as that kind of smallish center anyway. So I think for fantasy, your Kendrick Davis, your Xavier Cooks are your safe ones. And then let's hope for, a nice role for Suarez, or even Galloway played really well for Australia. Maybe he finds some form like he had a couple of years ago when he was a rookie in Sydney as well. But I think you just stay with the tried and tested, don't you? KD and Cooks for me for Sydney.
Yep. Yeah, I pretty much agree, mate. And the very disappointing there about Lepepe. He's a beast of a human, isn't he? He, to me, just doesn't look like a traditional basketballer. I thought he might be a rugby player, but yeah, really enjoyed watching him last year and started with him in the side. Vernsy, your thoughts on the Sydney Kings, my brother?
Yeah. I mean, look, very obvious Delhi, Davis. We love that. They're both fantasy relevant because they're guys that get high amounts of assists. Obviously, Davis is a bit more on the scoring front. So I think the better of the two, pretty obviously. Obviously, the small forward position, they're a little bit debatably lackluster from the Kings. I don't know if I'd say lackluster, but in my opinion, Jalen Galloway is the number one guy from the guys that we saw there. I'd put him in ahead of Qual, Malawatch. I think Jalen Galloway, he's also someone that does everything. He gets blocks, he gets assists. He's someone that I do really like, and he clearly has shown the development over the years. The question is, opportunity-wise, is he going to actually get that opportunity? I mentioned it to you boys at the start of this, but I do have a gold Jalen Galloway, so I'd love to see some opportunity from that man. But I just don't know if he will. Suarez, he's going to have the keys to the key, I guess. He's going to be the big man down low for them. He's not a huge scorer, but as we mentioned, with rebounds being worth so much in this game, if you're the main rebounder in your squad, you're getting 15 a game. That is a lot of points by itself. So even if you're only getting 8-10 points a game, you're already set up for a really good baseline by getting those high number of rebounds. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how they mix and mash. We didn't unfortunately see it in the preseason. Davis didn't really play too much. Cooks was off with the Australian team and didn't play too much. We did see a lot of Suarez. He's also, I believe, returning to the league. I believe he was here previously, so he at least knows how it works and probably a bit more used to it than anyone that's here for the first time. Yeah, Kings lineup. I think people have high expectations of them because you see Delhi and KD and obviously Cooks. But I think outside of those top end three, it's not as good of a lineup as some other teams, I think. So I think, I think KD is going to be number one guy there. Cooks will be fine as well. But I don't know how they're going to perform overall. Don't think it's actually going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if they miss finals. I'll just say that.
Ooh, so not necessarily a championship winning looking season at this stage, mate. But again, preseason, who knows? We've got one more team, lads, that we're going to cover. Epic job so far from you two, I'll tell you what. It is the Tassie Jack Jumpers. Now, if we go straight down to the bottom here, super disappointing. McDonald is obviously injured, so that's a big blow for them. But the thing that probably stands out for me, no Doyle and no Crawford. So they're going to have a bit of a different look this year. I think Ben Eyre coming into the side gives them a little bit of mongrel. No superstar there, but he'll certainly come in like a junkyard dog. Craig Sword, very disappointing import last year, so not surprised to see him go. Boz, what are you thinking about the Jack Jumpers going into this season, my man?
They've assembled a really strong team, I think. Albeit Tiger Campbell, who is their import, he wasn't probably meant, the Tassie Tiger. He wasn't meant to be, I don't think, on the roster, but unfortunately, Shawnee McDonald did his ACL, I think, in the Australian Asian Cup tournament. So I think they grabbed him, and he's a real pass-first point guard. So he's someone who I think averaged in his seasons prior to being in the league upwards of 7 to 8 assists a game. So I think that's something we'll see from him. So if you like someone that's assist first and someone that is going to obviously get those points to assist, well then I think Campbell's a really good asset there. Hamilton, I think, is the one that of the imports that stood out for me over the blitz in the preseason. He seems to be able to score at a high level, have a really balanced ability to get you 3-4 rebounds and assists a game, whilst also racking up some defensive stats. So I think Hamilton is the one that I would think has the most value within the imports. Johnson seems like a streaky shooter, like a really solid, just 3-and-D type guy that when he gets hot, he'll actually put in 6 or 7 threes a game. Again, threes have that added value. Potentially, if we see some good output from him, it could be an option. He kind of reminds me of Chandre Cook from Brisbane last year, who really was just a streaky 3-and-D guy, but it translated well into fantasy because he was quite good at that. Josh Bannon coming from Brisbane. I guess, are there too many mouths to feed now that we're looking through this list? Magnay as well. He's a defensive machine. Like he gets blocks, he gets steals, he gets rebounds. But as we know, not all of them can do this. And with the way Scott Roth likes to play, is there enough actual offense out there for us to get all 5 of those guys giving us, viable fantasy points? It could really be a year of Russian roulette where you're just hoping that the one card that you have is the one that goes off in that week. So pretty tricky to work out for me at the moment, but a lot of good potential if we do see a pathway for 1 or 2 of these guys.
Beautiful, mate. Vernsy, what's your read on the Jack Jumpers, man?
Honestly, the biggest standout in my team that I want, in my team, a card I don't actually have, it is going to be Tiger Campbell. We saw assists are worth 4 points. And even in the blitz, I think he averaged 8.2 something assists in the blitz. Like, this man gets assists. So that's what we love to see. Unfortunately, he's not going to be rebounding or blocking anyone, but he will steal the ball and he will still score, a few points himself, sort of thing. So I really liked what I saw from him. I do think, as you sort of mentioned with Hamilton and Johnson, I think it could be a real yin-yang. Like, one of them's going off one game, but the other one's going off the next game. So it could be a bit hard to get that right. It was a bit hard in the blitz too as well, because Hamilton kept playing games where he only played 13 minutes, 16 minutes, things like that, where they weren't overusing him. I think in the preseason games, because they had preseason games against Sydney, I watched those games. Johnson had only sort of just come to the country. Hamilton played a lot of court time in those games. So I feel like the Jack Jumpers had seen enough of Hamilton that when the blitz had hit, they gave him more bench time and they gave Johnson more of a run to get, him more into it. So we didn't really see either game, like any of the games where they're both going to be on the court together a bit more. But I do like them both. I think, as you said, Johnson, unfortunately, is mainly a scorer, which you want him to do a bit more than that. I think scoring, rebounding, that's fine. Not really going to be blocking, probably low steal numbers, and I don't think he's going to get many assists. Hamilton is a guy that wants the ball in his hand. He wants to take you on one-on-one to the basket. And what that does seem to make happen is it means that players will come to double team or slide over the help defense, and that allows passes to happen, dump offs to Magne, easy assists that way. So I think Hamilton will be, unfortunately, not really getting defensive stats, but he will get the offensive stats. And then Magne is probably one of the best Australian centers in the NBL. Out of all the I think that this is the funnest thing about Tasmania is they brought in 3 imports in sort of the guard positions, shooting guard, point guard, and the small forward. And then they have 2 natives playing the big roles. And I do love that. It's very unique. I think not many teams are sort of running that way. It's very traditional to get an import, center or power forward. So I do love that. I do like Bannon as a player. Not my favorite overall fantasy pick player. I think out of this, Campbell would be my favorite, probably followed by Magne for consistency. But then, Johnson and Hamilton, I think, will still be good picks, but it might just be a bit of a 50-50 on which one each week.
What a summation. What a summation. Well, we have just taken you through all 10 teams. And boys, as I said, lucky you two are here because you have absolutely carried us through this podcast. I think what we might do just to finish off is maybe take a quick look at what a game day squad may look like. Now, I don't know if you guys have your squads that we can maybe have a look at. I'll quickly get mine up. Now, there hasn't been a lot of thought into what my squad looks like at the moment. And again, it all depends on what type of cards you currently got your hands on. So at this stage, what I'm looking to do is run with Wardenberg, Magne, Prather, Foxwell, Cotton. And then you've got Windler, Doolittle, Illy, Hunter, and Milton Doyle. So, boys, is there any quick feedback you can give me on any of my selections there? Have I butchered anything at this stage, or do you think, given the other lack of cards that I've got at this point in the competition, do you think that's a half decent looking team? What are your thoughts, legends?
I mean, obviously, Bryce isn't playing round one. Round one, they got the bye, so you can't have him in your team DR.
Well, Bryce Cotton is gone. I reckon we're going to get Chris Goulding in there. All right, so no Bryce. Any other selections you can give me a hand on here? The Doyles, the Hunters, the Illies, the Doolittles, the Windler. I've got your man Windler in there.
I think I was just saying, like, just to confirm, your bench gives you the same amount of points as your court. Like, it's not
Same amount.
Yeah. So I guess because there's no value in obviously having someone on your starting court opposed to your bench, I don't think it really matters as long as you're, again, as I said probably earlier in the podcast, I would pick best player available for the first week. But yeah, you got some really handy cards there, DR. I'm looking at my team and I've been shafted, I reckon, with some of these starter packs.
Well, do you know what? I do have a couple of nice doubles here. So, Boz, we're going to make some trades, mate. I'll give you a couple of my stars for a couple of your duds just so we can even out things a little bit here, brother. But no, a big shout on Bryce there. That was a big miss on my behalf. Boys, have you got your teams you'd like to share across here?
Yeah. Look, with mine, I'm actually just going to quickly open these starter packs I have. I'll be honest, through the off season, if you do log in each week, you do get additional starter packs. And through the AFL off season, I've been jumping in, and I haven't opened any of them because I wanted to make sure all the imports are in the game. I didn't want to open them too early and, then an import get named that I really want, but I don't have any packs to get them. So I'm going to quickly open all mine now. So I don't know if you want to bring up your screen, Boz, and show your team in the meantime.
Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. Funnily enough, when I went on the Game Day website, I must have literally made an account at the start of last season. I think another podcasting network was doing like a bit of a promotion for it. So unfortunately, I didn't get to sign up with the United code. So I already had players like, as you can see, Rob Edwards, Keanu Pinder, Freddie Gillespie, Jack White, Trey Cowell, Jordan Crawford, who, as we know now, aren't on NBL rosters. So I only got a small amount of starter kind of packs. And with that, I've been able to do this. I've got Doolittle and Windler, my two Perth boys in the power forward and small forward positions. Owen Foxwell, who I'm happy about that for now. Ideally, it's a PJC in that point guard spot for me. But Owen Foxwell, I think, can be kind of viable. Milton Doyle, the shooting guard, I'm glad I held on to him. And then he gets really grim. I got Toby Smith-Milner for the Bullets at centre. I don't think he gets many minutes. The only reason for that is because I have Humphreys, who doesn't actually play. So at the moment, my bench, I've got four out of 5 bench options that aren't actually even playing in round 1 because I just don't have the roster. Now, if we go down to my reserves, I do have some extra players like an Alex McNaught from the Breakers, but he isn't going to get any minutes. The one guy I do see, I have a double Anthony Drimmick. Now, can anyone tell me, because they're both small forwards, I can't even put him on my bench, can I?
So I was off making a team.
I've got 2 of the same player. I can't double up.
Yeah, you can't put them on twice. Yep. You can only have one copy of the team.
Yeah, perfect. So the way that it's standing, I'll be going into round 1 with 6 out of 10 positions giving me scores, which is very grim. But hopefully I can get some trades going or a couple of extra packs open before round 1 so I can get at least a starting squad and obviously a full bench.
We will absolutely get you that, mate, as well as some silvers and golds. So you can even dip your toe potentially in a contender comp as well, brother. So we'll definitely get them across. It looks a little bit bare at the moment. Give it a couple of days, and this will be looking like an all-star bronze squad. I reckon.
I'm looking forward to it. That's the grind. We like it.
Exactly right. All right, Vernsy, have you got something you'd like to share with us, mate?
Oh, yeah, definitely do. Let's see. Share screens here. Sort of just making my last selection here in the team. But look, as I said, I just opened all these packs, so I was really happy to see that I popped a Tiger Campbell in that pack just then.
Oh,
nice. Very happy there. Definitely one I wanted. As we can sort of see, Warningberg, I already talked about does everything. So when you do everything, we love that in Supercoach. Magnate, he's got a double in round 1, so we love 2 bites of the cherry. Hopefully, you assume with these sort of superstars or starters, they're going to have at least one good game, right?
Come on,
a little bit of safety there. Prather, I pulled him in. As we sort of mentioned, he was a superstar last week. I'm expecting big minutes again this year and hopefully big output. Milton Doyle, I had him from last year, so nice and easy to keep him this season. And then we get the roll down, and I got a few extras that I also loved. PJC, he rolls over from last year. I opened a JLA, which feels amazing. I opened a Robert Baker who, as we talked about, did really well in their Japan game. I opened a unicorn as well in Renz Blaenberg, and I also got Bryce Hamilton. So I got some pretty nice ones just then, honestly, and I'm feeling pretty good about that opening team. This looks very nice. I might double check matchups. Unlike you fellas, I'm lucky enough that I do have enough cards that I can probably favor matchups with some of these. But I think that looks like a pretty solid round one team. Unfortunately, Boz, this is the only PJC I have. So
that's all right. I want a fresh pack pool PJC. That's going to be extra better.
It's all half the excitement is the hunt, isn't it, mate? That's right. Just like when you rip open a pack of AFL Select cards, it's all part of the fun, isn't it? Now, Verns, you've got very much a pep in your step after pulling out Young Tiger there, mate. Boys, I'm going to ask you both.
As I said, target-wise, he was definitely a guy I was going for, as well as the unicorn. So I am pretty pumped I got him. I was surprised to see the unicorn as a small forward, which I think is actually really good because, as I mentioned, that role is a little bit bare. It's got Prather in there, who's probably the number one guy. But knowing that the unicorn's there as well, that's perfect. I thought he was going to be a power forward, and he was going to be contesting with guys like Doolittle and Warningberg and Rob Baker. And, I thought there was going to be a lot of good options there. But small forward is, as I said, a bit more bare, so that feels really good.
Beautiful, mate. Now, Boz, I'm going to ask you this question. I already know what the answer is, so I might ask you to give me another one as well. But the question was going to be, if there is one player that you want to add to your squad, who is it going to be? And the answer is PJC, obviously. So I'm going to ask you, apart from PJC, I'm going to ask if there's a nice gold card, a nice gold that you could add to your collection, who's it going to be? And his name's not PJC.
Ooh, you've stopped me here because I'm very one-eyed. No, I think I might keep it local. I think it's really not important to have an Australian player in your team because at the end of the day, you want to win. If that means by putting in all imports, that is fine. But I do see with the defensive upside potential of the point scoring system, I think someone like a Will Magnay would be a really solid goal card to have because he does foul and he is quite injury prone. But I think we see that when he's on his day, he can rack up 2 steals, 4 blocks in one game, and that's going to absolutely rack you up those fantasy points. So yeah, we'll keep it local, and a Willie Magnay goal would be nice.
Love it. So PJC / Willie Magnay. All right, Verns, I'm going to give you two choices as well, mate, because I gave Boz 2 choices. One, we knew what it was. That was already locked in. Time for you, mate. 2 cards of your choice, 2 golds. Who would you lock in?
Honestly, I don't think it matters who you are. The answer should always be PJC, I think. He is probably going to be one of the highest scoring fantasy players in this format, full stop. So he should nearly always be the answer. But if I had to choose a bronze card that I don't have right now, we talked about Jesse Edwards. I just checked, and unfortunately, I didn't get him in any of the packs I just opened. He's someone that I would love as a bronze card to bring in. As a gold, there's so many good options to choose from. And look, I'd probably have to go KD. Obviously, he's not playing round 1, but it's a season-long competition, and he's someone that he will also be in the pointy end of total points scored. Saying that, I do think this format is probably slightly tailored towards the big men just because of those rebounds being worth so many points. So, I mean, I'd love a JLA gold as well. I mean, just for another one.
That was my thought. So I had PJC and JLA as the 2 goals that I'd love to add to the squad as well. So I think we're very much on the same page there with some of those dream cards. Hopefully the boys might be able to look after us a little bit there, lads. But that is it. That is it for the first episode of the Swordplay GDS NBL podcast. Guys, I've already mentioned at the top, but I could not be happier, and I can speak on behalf of all the Swordplay crew, could not be happier to welcome both of you on board. Your knowledge on the game is second to none. And the main thing is, this is the big box that you need to tick on this channel, the good bloke vibe. And you absolutely have that in spades, a massive green tick for both of you there. So, Boz, we'll start with you, mate. Thank you very much for joining us. How did you enjoy that GDS / NBL chat, mate? Season 1, episode 1.
Well, I think first and foremost, DR, I've got to thank you because you've reignited some motivation when it comes to the NBL space after some happenings of the last week or two. So no, really enjoyed my time. Really keen to kind of get stuck into something a little bit different. I'm currently playing NBA, EPL, just got off AFL Supercoach. I'm doing it all. So it's actually nice to do something maybe a little bit different. But yeah, super keen to be sticking around in the NBL space. So thank you very much.
The pleasure's all ours, mate. And I know that you're mainly active on X/Twitter. So where can we find you there, mate, for any of us that want to give you a follow over that way?
Yeah, super easy. So just SC_Boz. It was majority NBL content, but I am going to be dipping into the Supercoach NBA content as well.
Beautiful, mate. Lots to look forward to there. Thank you again, mate, for joining us on for the first episode. And Vernsy, you've finally been able to put all of that great preseason research to good use. Thank you again for joining us, mate. Cannot thank you enough.
Yeah, well, as Boz said, thanks for having us. Yeah, it was great to have a chit chat. I know it was probably a very long video for many people, but the season kicks off so quickly.
I think haven't mentioned that, have we? You're right. It's coming quick.
Yeah, the season is about to kick off. So saying that game day squad is one of those things that you can join. It doesn't matter when in the season you join because the weekly prizes are still really, really good. So, get involved and it feels great. Yeah, and as Boz said as well, like I was super excited for this NBL season, all the off-season moves. I was so hyped for it. So to actually be able to, play a fantasy format, it makes me very excited, and I'm very happy that Game Day Squad does have this here because I was really heartbroken with what happened with Supercoach. So.
Oh, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. And we obviously know that you've got your own YouTube channel that you might be putting some content on from time to time. Yeah, NBA knowledge is also really good as well, mate. But for those of you that want to follow you on X or any of the other socials, where can we find you, brother?
Yeah, it's just Verns_SC on X, and then YouTube, it's just Verns Supercoach. Look, Game Day Squad stuff, I think we're going to keep it to this channel, sort of talk about it here. But yeah, I was talking with Boz. Obviously, we'll try and maybe get some NBA stuff out. Yeah, see what we do there. Unfortunately, I'm not an expert in NBA. That's why I reached, asking Boz to sort of help guide me there.
Yeah, well, Boz has been doing that for about 10, 15 years, haven't you, mate? The NBA space.
Yeah, and not necessarily like the super coaches. I know there was an NBA Dream Team format, which basically had the same scoring system, but I've done a lot of NBA fantasy, so like redraft leagues every year with mates, and we've been running a dynasty league for the last, I think, 8 years, where you obviously keep and hold on to 6 or 7 of your players each year and then redraft again through that process as well. So yeah, I'd like to say I'm a bit of an NBA nerd as well.
I love it, mate. Love it. Well, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Remember, when you sign up, use that code UNITED, UNITED. That's going to get you not only your starter packs, but also some common packs, $20 worth of value on us for free. And if you want to win yourself a free pack, all you need to do is comment down here in the comment section with your dream card. You heard what ours are. We want some PJCs, JLA, Magne Golds. What's your dream card? Comment down below and you'll go into the draw to win a free common pack of NBL cards. So, guys, that is it for the first episode of the season. Thank you very much for joining us, legends, and we'll see you soon in the next one. Catch you later, lads. Cheers.